All right, my friends, a lot of you have asked me how long does pour paint last when you put it in a storage container? And the quick answer is it depends on the water that you use. The water is going to bring in the most contaminants of any of the other pieces. The pouring medium isn't really going to have contaminants. It's going to come straight out of its bottle. And the paint's not really going to have any contaminants unless it's been sitting for months and months or years and years. It's really the water that you introduce that could potentially cause problems. And I generally tell people, if you use tap water, you're going to get a couple of weeks, maybe a little bit longer before you start seeing stuff start to grow in your paint. If you use filtered water, you're going to go up to months that you could do it. If you use purified or distilled water, which really has removed 99.999% of the contaminants. I think it's something like 16 to 20 parts per million that distilled and purified water has. Then you probably can keep it for months and months. There are some other factors which we're going to talk about here in just a minute, but that's the easy answer. And if that's all you're looking for and this video has been helpful, the only thing I ask is that you hit that like button so this can spread to other acrylic pour artists that need to find this answer. Otherwise, let's get into some of the other details that can affect how long you can keep your acrylic pour paint in storage. All right, so we know that water is the most important part to how long your paint's going to last. But there are some other things that are very important. The first one I would say is how long your paint was in the open air. Because I don't know if you've ever seen sunlight coming through your window, directly through your window in the morning or in the evening, there's dust motes everywhere. And those dust motes carry bacteria and different live things. And the more of that can get in your paint, the more potential you have of your paint going bad. So a big open container that is open for long periods of time has a higher chance of your paint going bad than a container that is very small, has been in the container the whole time. It's very highly unlikely that very much is going to get into this container. So that is another big factor of how long your paint's going to last. If this was out for 2 days straight while I was painting and then I shut it back up and I do that over and over and over again, it's more likely that this is going to have things actually growing in it. So the next thing for me is separation. Paints by default are an emulsion, which means it's one material trapped in another material. And we have our pigments and our medium in our paints that are separate. And I don't know if you can see in this container here, I have some white liquid and some dark pigment that have separated. And in this case, the pigment actually has dried on one side, so I'm not going to be able to integrate this anymore. It's just been sitting for way too long without any movement. That's why every once in a while, when you have something like this, you want to just give it a shake or give it a twirl just to make sure that you don't get settling like I had in this paint. Otherwise, you could ruin your paint that way. Really quickly, what problems have you had with mixed paint that has been left for long periods of time? Let us know in the comments below. And just in case that I missed some of these items, we can talk about that and learn together. The next thing is exposure to sunlight. The more sunlight, and I'm using a different light here, the more sunlight you allow your paint to get exposed to, the more the things in the paint are going to have energy to grow. So you want to keep your stored paint out of sunlight, especially if you use glass or a see-through plastic like this. The more sunlight that's coming through, the more potential you have for things growing in that mix. Another thing about settling is I have this house paint, and you can see that the house paint is this nice, beautiful color. It's called Gone Fishing. And you can see if I go down inside here. Let's show you this up front. See how this is all liquid. But if I go deep inside, I have my actual paint and I can make it integrated again. All paints are like this. Latex, it's a little more pronounced, but even with your acrylic paints, it's the same way. And if you let this sit too long, the solid stuff that's going to be at the bottom is going to congeal and dry. And I don't mean dry as in losing the liquid. I mean dry as in all that powder is going to drop to the bottom. The lighter liquid's going to rise to the top. So the powder is going to be able to harden on itself, kind of like concrete. That's why they always recommend that you stir your paint frequently so that separation doesn't happen. Last but not least are external contaminants. If you put something in like a metal container, see how this is starting to oxidize? That's just going to put more contaminants in your paint. So normally you want to use paint like this quickly, or else you're going to have this all get into your paint, and that has already started to form on these cans. So you do got to worry about that. Just to recap, water's the most important part. Tap water, a couple of weeks. Filtered water, a couple of months. Distilled or purified water, many months. And you just want to make sure that occasionally you stir them up and your paint will last a very long time. So the next thing I want you guys to watch, if you haven't already, is 7 things that I wish I knew when I started acrylic pouring, and that video link is here.